Hi, my name is Mitch Stephen, and I've bought and sold about 2,000 houses in my career. I started full-time in March 1996, and I specialize in buying houses with OPM or other people's money and selling them on 30-year fixed notes where I'm not a landlord, I'm the bank. I'm the mortgage company. All I'm responsible for is collecting the payment. So, in today's episode, we're going to talk about how much does central air add to a house. Stay tuned. In today's episode, we're going to cover some questions and some topics concerning AC, like, is central heat and AC a must in today's market? Some of the issues to consider when adding AC and heat to a home that has previously not had AC and heat. Then we're going to talk about a new option for AC and heat that you definitely might want to consider. And last but not least, an important tip that you may not have thought about when it comes to central heat and air. Is central heat and air a necessity in today's markets? Well, the answer is absolutely yes, but there's always a caveat. Isn't that the case for everything? There are parts of the country that simply don't really require central heat and air most of the time. Now, these parts of the country are like Central California or like the northwest coast of around Seattle and Portland. Some parts of the coast in the Northeast, and parts of like Colorado and Idaho, just to name a few, and I'm sure there's many, many more. You'll just want to be aware if you're in one of those markets, and you'll know if you're in one of those markets, and you may be able to make some exceptions. But for the most part, central heat and AC are a must. If you happen to be in one of those regions that don't need central heat and AC most of the time, you're going to have some extremes in the winter or in the summer, and it would be helpful if you at least had sufficient insulation and if you had maybe an attic fan that you could turn on and off so that when there were some extreme times you could turn it on. And that would be if you get in a heat wave. That's when an attic fan is especially helpful. Now, if you get into the cold extremes, it would be nice if these houses had a fireplace or some kind of wood-burning stove or something you could put in. Either way, there are portable units that you can bring in. Air conditioning for when it gets a little too hot and heat when it gets a little too cold. And you might just want to have those handy up in the attic or out someplace so you could plug them in when you need them. And let's not forget, the old trusty dusty electric blanket does wonders at night. So what do we need to consider when the home that we are contemplating putting central heat and air in has never ever had a central unit in it? There are definitely some big obstacles that you may need to be aware of, because if you don't look for them in advance, they could blindside you. The biggest problem when installing a new system into a house that's never had a system is the electrical. You know, I've done this many times. I've bought these older houses that didn't have a central heat and air system. And I ordered, called the air conditioner guy and did the cubic feet measurements and everything and figured out what we needed and even got it ordered. And then when it got there, I was told that this house didn't have the capability to handle the extra load on the electrical system. Then I go look at the electrical system and find out it has the glass fuses and or it has aluminum wiring. In this scenario, I have to rewire the complete house and redo every box and put in new, improved, more modern breakers. And this job just went from one number over here to a much higher number over there. And it's not fun. I also want to emphasize the complications that can arise when you start calling inspectors out to your house. When they come just to look at that electrical, they're going to see more than just the electrical. If there have been any improvements done by you or maybe even the previous owner of this house without permits being pulled, you could be in for a rough and rocky ride over those situations as well. It's always edgy when inspectors start coming to your house. You ask them there for one reason, but they are there and they are looking for all kinds of things that maybe you don't even know happened. Beyond the electrical issue, there's probably going to be issues with where are we going to put these ducts. The duct work that it takes to to control this air and to disseminate the air throughout the house. Where are you going to put these ducts? Now, in a traditional house with an attic space over the entire house, it's a little bit easier to rationalize how you're going to get it done. But you're going to want to look at the architecture of your house and pay particular attention to areas with flat roofs or with no ceiling attic space, because then it gets complicated fast. And don't forget, just because you can't rationalize how to get ductwork from A to Z doesn't mean that a professional who's done this many, many times can't figure it out real easy and can see a solution that maybe you can't see. So if you get stumped, don't give up right there and assume that's how it is. Hire a professional, see if they have any ideas first before you start making drastic decisions. Now, I have a tip involving mini splits, but before we get to that, let me ask you to pay some attention to that share button and that like button. Would you mash on them a few times? Let the world know that we exist, especially if you find these episodes helpful. And go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We have a lot more content where this is coming from. And sometimes getting a complete system for the complete house doesn't always have to be the only option. We have some really good options these days, and one of the best options for hard to reach rooms or rooms that are very difficult to get ductwork into is a mini split system. A mini split has an outside condensing unit and an inside unit, kind of like the hotels used to have underneath the windows by the bed. They had an outside condensing unit and an inside cooler blower, and it's the same thing, but they're aesthetically very pleasing. They're moderately priced. They can go from cheap to expensive. I wouldn't suggest buying the cheapest mini split. I don't suggest buying the most expensive. I think a middle of the road one with high ratings from the customers would be good. The cool thing about the mini split is it can be turned off in the room when you're not using it. So it's a way of cutting your overhead or your electric bill, and you can put them almost anywhere. So if there's a place that you can't get ductwork to, you can probably solve the problem with a mini split. Just know this, that if you've installed a new central heat and air system and you've had this one area that has a mini split, you're going to have to keep the partitions between those two rooms closed, because if you leave them open and the mini split's not running, you're putting too much stress on your main system. The systems are designed for certain cubic feet, and if you've put a mini split in a certain room and then demand that the central system or the main system handle it as well, you're going to throw off all the balance and the system won't work efficiently. So just remember, if you got a mini split in a room, keep the door closed until that room is sufficiently cold. And today I would like to give you 31 pages of my second book. It's the first 31 pages of that book. And that book's called My Life in 1,000 Houses, 200 Plus Ways to Find Bargain Properties. But in that book, I thought it was only fair that I teach new investors how to set up their business and their cards, their letterhead, how to set up so that going forward, they never have to change again. There's a certain way to set up for branding, and this includes names, phone numbers, your personal logos, whatever. You have to get that together, and then there's a certain thinking behind it. If you negate or pass over these 31 pages and don't catch some of the nuances, you're going to have trouble with your branding for years and years to come. It won't be consistent. It'll be herky-jerky. It'll be starting over all the time until you finally figure out all the pieces. I'm going to give you those pieces in 31 pages. Easy read, and you'll read these pages and say, man, that made perfect sense, Mitch, and I'm so glad you told me this before I got involved. It'll save you a lot of time. So just go to 1000houses.com/free-stuff and click on the link that says free 31 pages branding. And that'll get you a digital download, and you'll be reading that and all the smarter within minutes.